Her father had told Layla that when the flowers bloomed in the spring, they would go to the park together. After the promise her father made with a faint smile on his face, it became his will. For that child, spring never came again. A girl who found herself alone in the world and had to constantly move from relative to relative. Her life was truly horrible. The boys bullied the girl by making their own rules. If she wanted to be with them, they needed to hide the girl. This meant cruel and humiliating treatment when joining a certain group. These were the children of the aunt on her father's side, and they bullied the little girl every chance they got. The boys threatened that they didn't care about kinship and would send Layla to an orphanage. The guys argued that if she was abandoned even by her own mother, they were certainly not obliged to raise the little girl. One of the guys threw the girl into the water. As soon as the girl struggled to drag her wounded body home, she was immediately hit with a fist from her aunt's husband. The man blamed the girl, saying that after they let her into the house, they had no damn luck, especially on days when he was losing money gambling. No one could stop his cruel abuse. That time was hell, but all a kid with nowhere to go could do was endure and hang in there. But still, the misery piled up like snow that snowed all night. Layla asked her aunt to take her to work with her. She promised she wouldn't get in the way. The girl begged not to leave her, but the woman said to go to other relatives and beg them. The aunt argued that it would be better elsewhere than here. On one of the coldest winter days, the child was kicked out into the street again. After that, she went to other relatives. But no one accepted the child who had become a despicable orphan, a child abandoned by her own mother. When Layla had given up all hope, a man suddenly approached her. He asked if she knew where Burko was. The man told her to go there and find this man, handing her a piece of paper with his name on it. That's how the child traveled from Robita, where she was born and raised, to Burko. The girl boarded the train crossing the border, holding out a small hope for the unfamiliar name written on the piece of paper. Layla arrived in Burko at the Carlsbar station. She was worried that suddenly she would not be able to find the man, worried that she wouldn't be able to return to Robita, but she decided not to think about it. Burko was the country where her father was born, and thanks to him, the girl knows the local language. The little girl pondered to ask someone for directions and turned to the letter carrier. The little girl asked the letter carrier to explain to her the way to the given address on a leaflet. The address on the leaflet was the Duchy of Gerhardt's gardener, Bill Reamer. Fortunately, the letter carrier knew him well. The man was just on his way with a delivery to the estate and told the girl to head for him. Layla looked out the window with admiration and saw the manor where the Duke lived. It looked like a world descended from the pages of fairy tales. The little girl was curious to see the gardener who worked in such a beautiful place. The girl was anxious for him to receive her, and while she waited for him to arrive, she straightened her posture and stood with a smile. The girl decided to approach the man who was digging up the ground. She inquired if he was Uncle Bill Reamer. The man answered in the affirmative. The little girl introduced herself as Layla Livelin and said she came from Robita. The man assumed the girl had some business for him. The girl thought the man had set her up when he assured her he would warn Bill. The man asked the mailman if he had brought the child. The mailman claimed he'd met the girl at the station, explaining that she had asked him to bring her to Bill Reamer. A letter from Robita had just been delivered for the man. The letter stated that a child named Layla Livelin was coming to see Bill. She is the daughter of Albert Livelin, and her mother fell in love with another long ago and left home. Because of this, Albert went on a binge and died of illness. In the letter, the man explained that their family was poor, like most of her relatives. Therefore, they could not accept another person, and Bill's situation seemed the best in their opinion. Bill Reamer was confused after what he had read. After all, he and Albert were strangers, and the kinship was only in words. He had last seen the girl's father 20 years ago. With anger, Bill crumpled the sheet. The man kept saying that killing them wasn't enough, and it was overkill for him. He was furious that these relatives had sent the little girl so far away alone, not thinking at all what could be with a child in a far country. The man noticed that the girl was coldly dressed for the current weather, and she was as thin as an iron bar. Apparently, she hadn't eaten much, and there was only one bag. The girl assured Uncle Bill that she wasn't so little. She reminded him that she would be 12 in a few weeks. The little girl claimed she could count and could help with the chores. Uncle ordered them to follow him and suggested they go out to eat first and then think. They arrived at Uncle Bill's house. The girl did not see any other family members, assuming that he lived alone. The man noticed that the girl had put little food for herself. Layla claimed that she really didn't eat much. Bill didn't like kids who didn't eat enough. He explained that she should eat well and with appetite, like a cow. Layla replied that it would be difficult, like a cow, but she promised her uncle to eat well. Bill suggested that apparently the girl used to eat with an eye on others. The man wondered why the little girl was not afraid of him. The girl explained that he did not yell or hit her and gave her tasty food. Therefore, she is grateful to Bill, and he seems like a good man to her. Bill was shocked by what he heard. He had no idea what kind of life the girl lived if she was grateful for such simple things. Though he felt sorry for the little girl, the fact that he would raise her was absurd to Bill, promising himself to solve the problem of her by next week. But as yet, he had no idea where he could send the child. Bill said that until the question of where she would live was settled, she could remain living in the house. The girl was very upset that it was the same this time and didn't know where to go. Layla kindly inquired how the uncle had slept tonight. She offered to help the man and put the plates on the table. They ate breakfast at the table, and Uncle Bill insisted that the girl eat more. Layla was amused and joked that the cow had an appetite. The maid discussed that Bill Remmer would raise the girl. The maid argued that he was more suited to raise a lion or an elephant, and the guy assured that he had lived alone all the time after his wife died and couldn't have a child. The whole staff wondered how such an emotionless statue would raise a girl. The maid suggested that he might, on the contrary, take unexpectedly good care of her. Bill has an innate talent for growing flowers. The man was the best gardener, officially recognized by old my lady. The heroine suggested that she could raise the wench well if she applied professional skills. The servants saw the man working in the window and had the girl beside him. They claimed she was just a baby, admiring her golden hair. They were curious to know how old she was. Full of hardship, the story of the lonely orphan Layla Livelin quickly spread among the servants. The maids showed concern for the little girl, treating her to cookies. It was surprisingly pleasant for the girl. The maids were worried that the girl might end up in an orphanage, and every time they inquired about Bill's decision, he claimed he hadn't, assuring them that she couldn't be left here and needed to think it over. As spring passed in his musings and it came to summer, the image of Layla following Bill Reamer and helping him with his work became a familiar landscape, and the servants made a verdict that it was better for him to be a gardener. Next to him, the girl turned into a dirty girl. The heroine brought a basket of cookies and cake, explaining that my lady had a tea party yesterday. The man claimed he hated sweets, and the woman asked him to give it to her for Layla. Bill didn't like the fact that lately, everyone had been staggering into his house disguised as Layla. New dresses were being worn for the girl, the best books were being bought, writing materials were being bought. The man noticed that sometimes even people would stop by just to see the girl. He claimed that they all gave him a headache. The heroine explained it's all because Layla is very sweet, highlighting her cheerfulness and politeness, and the desire to care for her arises on its own, recalling how the girl used to hop around the forest and garden, just like a squirrel, recalling the Duke and the fact that there were no children in this house, mentioning his refinement as a child. In the course of the conversation, the woman noticed Layla climbing up a tree and starting to scream. Mr. Bill did not know who had taught her that, but noted the skill as quite useful. Miss Mona was furious at what she heard, accusing the man of improper parenting. Bill thought his upbringing was fine and saw no problem. The heroine reminded him that Layla was a girl and needed to be as dainty as a flower. The woman was worried lest Bill raise the little girl to be a tomboy like himself. Layla was up in the tree asking Miss Mona and her uncle how they were doing, marveling at the great weather. The man argued that the heroine was worrying in vain. He explained that it was more important that the girl grow up healthy. Mona asked if Bill had decided where he was going to send the baby, since it was already summer. Bill planned to figure out where to send the girl in a week, but he hadn't made a decision yet, assuming that it remained to send the baby to an orphanage, though he doubted his confidence. He wanted to send the little girl somewhere where she could grow up and not be in pain. But there was no answer to this question, and Bill Reamer became more and more immersed in reflection. Spring passed and summer came. The child grew quickly surrounded by his warm care, carefully hidden behind indifference, into a girl who loved the beautiful Arvis forest and the birds. As the child grew, the forest changed each time. Fruit appeared on branches where leaves stretched thickly. Wild animals expanded their habitats following the warm wind. New lives were born every day. Watching the light break in shards on the surface of the Schurter River made this place seem like paradise. And the time spent in Robert seemed like a distant nightmare. Sitting in her favorite tree, Layla wrote down in a notebook everything she saw and felt every day, so that one day, when she left this place, she could open the notebook, if suddenly, even unhappy times would come again. But the memories of this paradise for the girl will not be forgotten. The little girl, Happy, went inside the house and saw her uncle going somewhere. The man explained that he had to look somewhere, told her to pack up and go out. Layla started to get very nervous, but the uncle calmed the girl down, claiming that they were going into town to buy clothes. Bill explained that Duke Gerhardt was returning soon, and it was inappropriate to greet him like this. The Duke was the master of this estate. The man said that his semester would soon be over and he would return, and that he was spending his summer vacation in Arvis. The girl wondered if Duke was also going to school. Bill explained that the lad was 18 years old and had nothing to do but go there. The man wondered why the girl was so surprised by that, adding that Gerhardt had become a duke at her age. The little girl was even more surprised at what she heard. Duke Gerhardt was met by a servant to take him to the manor. The lad was surprised that there was a carriage waiting for him. The servant explained that my lady did not approve of automobiles at all. The lad remembered that his grandmother still thought cars were nasty and dangerous pieces of iron. But Gerhardt appreciated it and was glad to be riding in a classic for the first time in a long time. As they rode along, a servant provided the Duke with a schedule of social gatherings to be held in Arvis, talking about the directors' meeting on the problem of merchant ships. All the servants were nervously waiting for the Duke. The maid noticed Layla wearing a new garment that had been bought especially for Gerhardt's greeting. The girl boasted that her uncle had bought it for her. When the Duke arrived, the grandmother welcomed Matthias back and hugged her grandson. His mother noticed that he had grown even taller. Lunch was ready, and they all went into the house together. The girl noticed that the Duke went inside, and her uncle said that the greeting would have to be postponed. Layla was upset, for the man had bought new clothes for her. Bill assured the little girl that she would be able to see Duke Gerhardt in the woods. The Duke loved hunting, the man explained, that the forest was the family's hunting grounds. Layla worried that he might have hunted birds. The uncle confirmed that the Duke liked to aim for birds more than anything else. The girl was discouraged by her uncle's statement. The man claimed that she would be surprised to see Duke handling a gun, emphasizing that the lad was so young, but already a celebrated marksman. The little girl was alarmed that the lad was shooting birds and argued that there was plenty of food on the estate and no hunting. The uncle explained that for the aristocrats, hunting is a kind of entertainment. The girl hoped the lad would dislike hunting. The uncle noticed how his words affected the little girl and in a moment regretted what he had said earlier. A week later, Layla was running through her favorite forest and noticed that 5 birds hatched in a hollow tree. They were screaming because they were hungry, the girl reassured them, saying that their mom would be back soon with food. In the past, when Layla's mom left, she would tell the girl that she was going very far away. She said she would be back very late, but promised to come back and gave her a jar of candy. Suddenly, the girl noticed the bird's mom and started to come down from the tree so that the bird would not be afraid of her. And after that, the bird flew into the nest to feed her babies. The girl wrote in her notebook that all the babies of the great tit had hatched safely. She drew the birds and emphasized their fluffy feathers. The little girl analyzed that the birds leave the nest 2 weeks after hatching, which meant she would soon be able to see the chicks fly. She was insanely excited about that. While the girl was sitting in the tree, she saw a guy riding a horse. She decided to wait for him to pass, but the guy stopped near the tree where Layla was sitting. The girl accidentally slipped and Gerhardt pointed his gun right at her. She was badly frightened and explained that she was waiting for him to pass. The boy asked who she was. The girl introduced herself as Layla Livelin, climbed down from the tree and ran away screaming. The uncle worriedly asked what happened. She explained that she had met some man in the woods, describing the guy as tall, having black hair and blue eyes, and his voice was smooth, like the feathers of a waterfowl. The uncle explained to the girl that it was Duke Gerhardt who was out hunting, and reminded her that he had said earlier that she would meet him often in the forest. Matthias von Gerhardt was heir to an honorable family that had everything but a king. He had the innate qualities and nobility of a high aristocrat, with reserved and graceful manners. People nicknamed him the masterpiece of House Gerhardt. Everyone genuinely cared and loved him, but only one person living in his domain thought otherwise, and that was Layla Livelin. When the Duke came to the forest, even in a day, many birds would lose their lives. Birds to him, the smaller they were, the harder they were to get at, and therefore became even more interesting. Birds to him were living targets. The guy didn't even pay attention to the game he hit. Even if they died, bleeding to death, he would just walk away, leaving them there. Recently, a mama tit died, carrying food to her babies all day long. The weak motherless chicks died without ever leaving the nest. All last month, Duke visited the forest, and Layla, who was bearing the bodies of cold dead birds, decided to nickname the boy a handsome, cruel bird killer. The little girl wanted to help her uncle on weekdays, worried that he was out in the heat alone, but the man insisted that the girl rest and forbade her to walk with him and hated not being listened to. In parting, the uncle reminded her to eat peaches if she was hungry and left her alone in the clearing. Suddenly, a strange boy ran up to her and asked if she lived here. Layla answered that she lived with Uncle Bill. The boy called the man a scary gardener and was afraid whenever he saw him. The girl defended her uncle and asked if the boy lived here. The boy claimed he came with his father, and his papa is the attending physician of this family and is being examined by old Milady today. Sometimes the boy comes with his father, with my lady's permission. Kyle was surprised to hear that the girl was 12, for she looked very young. But when she told him that he was small too, the boy rebelled and proved that he was the tallest in the class. The girl argued that he was certainly no taller than her uncle. Kyle agreed that even among adults, it would be hard to find taller. Layla felt a little awkward about the fact that he had already been sitting next to her for a long time. The main character pulled a peach out of her bag and a knife to slice it. The boy wondered what the girl had a knife in her bag. The little girl replied that Uncle Bill had given it to her. The little girl gave the boy a peach, and he was grateful, and inquired of the girl what was the reason she was not so cheerful. She explained that the Duke and his friends were always hunting birds, and added that they kill birds for fun. The boy claimed that that's what hunting was invented for. The girl thought he was the same way, but Kyle immediately assured that he felt sorry for the animals. Layla initially thought he was strange, but after the words about animals, convinced that he was very good. She offered him another peach, and Kyle gladly accepted. His parents called the boy to go home. He said his full name was Kyle Ettman and extended his hand to the girl. She extended her hand, reciprocated, and introduced herself as Layla Livelin. Kyle said that they would meet again and he would bring something delicious for the girl. The little girl wasn't sure about the meeting due to the possibility of leaving the place. The mom wondered who the girl was. The boy shared that she lived at the gardener's uncle's house, and they were the same age as her. The uncle came back from work, and the girl was happy to see him and ran towards him. Layla told him that she had met a boy and he was the same age as her. A duke and his friends were walking towards them. They greeted each other, and the boy remarked that he hadn't seen Remmer in a long time. The man confessed that he was going to keep this child in Arvis. Bill explained that both mistresses were already aware of it. After getting their permission, he decided to inform the Duke. One of his friends recognized Layla as the girl who lived in the woods. The boy said that she was hiding behind a tree and watching for anything to bury the bird. Duke remembered that she was the one sitting in the tree, and he had almost shot her by accident, mistaking her for a bird. Soon the boy told Bill to do as he wished. The girl turned to Claudine to behave as a lady should. The heroine was bored and lonely, and it was suggested that she go and play with her older brothers. Madame Gerhardt claimed that it was because she had no friends her age here. Claudine noticed the girl and wondered if she could play with her. They were the same age. Madame Gerhardt shared that she is an orphan from abroad, and the woman is not sure that Layla is the kind of child who could be a playmate. Claudine assured that it's more interesting than playing with a puppy. Madame Guéret told the servants to call the girl to them. The servants turned to Remer, asking him to bring the girl for Madame. Bill didn't understand why they needed Layla. The servant explained that the lady of the Brandt family wanted to play with the girl. The man doubted, but could not refuse mistress, because it was an order from her. The girl told her uncle that she would go to the lady and later return home. The maid brought the little girl to Madame. The girl saw Madame up close for the first time and thought she looked beautiful. Madame wondered if Claudine liked the girl. But the protagonist did not realize what a strange question it was. In this place where people wore luxurious clothes, no one seemed to be interested in Layla's feelings. Soon, the mistress called a maid and gave an order. The maid took Layla by the hand and took her to a place the girl had never seen before. The maid washed the girl in a luxurious bath and dressed her in wonderfully white and soft clothes. The maid's touch was rather rough and painful, but Layla endured it all. It seemed to her that she was obliged to endure. After all, this was mistress's order. And if the girl suddenly said even one wrong word, Uncle Bill could have a problem. The maid warned the girl that Miss Claudine was the Count of Brandt's daughter. She is a person with whom Layla cannot behave carelessly, and it is important for her to remember that. The maid led the girl into the room. Claudine immediately started asking the protagonist what her name was and how old she was. After the heroine found out that the girl was 12, she was sure she was less than that. Layla was uncomfortable answering such questions and explaining why she was small, but she remembered Uncle Bill and kept her cool. Claudine asked if she knew how to play the piano, but it was the first time the girl had seen such a large piano. The heroine offered Layla various games related to pranking artificial flowers or dice games. But the protagonist had never tried anything like that in her life. The heroine called Layla a child who doesn't really know anything. Claudine hoped that she would have fun, but lastly said that the girl was no better than a puppy. Layla was left sitting alone on the chair. She wanted to go home to Uncle Bill's house badly, but she didn't leave, thinking that Miss might still come back. When it was already dark, the girl left the estate. As the little girl was coming down the steps, a maid came up to her. She claimed that Miss Brandt had allowed her to take the garment and had left a coin for her. The maid said to accept with gratitude whatever they gave, for it was part of etiquette. Suddenly the girl noticed Claudine and her brothers. Layla was confused. She was relieved that the Duke wasn't there. The heroine said goodbye to her and bowed and quickly ran away from the palace. Suddenly, the little girl accidentally tripped as she ran and fell to the ground. A coin rolled out of her hand and she noticed someone's shoes. A duke was standing over her. The guy was looking at the girl, and she felt insignificant in front of him. Duke Gerhat made Layla realize how insignificant her presence here was. At first glance, one corner of his red lips seemed to be raised. As soon as the girl noticed it, the pain engulfing her body miraculously disappeared. The only thing on the girl's mind were the words spoken by Miss Brandt, deeply wounding the little girl's heart that she was no better than a puppy. She bent down to pick up the dropped coin, got up, and ran away with pain in her heart. All the way home, the girl was accompanied by a lump stuck in her throat, ready to burst out right now. It was only when she passed the forest path and saw the warm light coming from the house that she realized what it was. It was sadness. The next day, Bill came into the room and asked the girl if she was going into the woods. The girl replied that she would be home today. The uncle noticed that today was the second day that Layla sat depressed in her room. The girl held out a coin to her uncle and said that Miss Brandt had given it to her. Now the uncle understood why the girl was so depressed after visiting the mansion. The uncle inquired why she was giving him this money. The girl thought it was a large sum. The uncle insisted that if she had a lot of money, it should not be thrown away even if she was upset. The girl thought a lot, and such actions seemed bad to her. The girl thought that if she gave money to her uncle, she could pay him back for his kindness just a little bit. The uncle remembered the moment when Layla came home. It was as if she was trying to escape from trouble. The man realized that at the mansion, the girl had been confronted with something that caused great pain. But he pretended not to notice anything because he was afraid to bring her to tears with his questioning. The man told the girl to keep the money, as she had earned it herself. The girl did not understand what she had earned it with. Bill explained that it was money for her work and for her time spent with the dying aristocrat. Her uncle said that it was indeed a thankless job, but the girl had done a great job with it, so she could confidently accept the payment. The man thought it was the right thing to do. The uncle congratulated Layla on her entry into the adult world. The girl began to reflect on the money she had earned and looked at the coin, thinking she was still a child. But Bill explained if she could make a living on her own, then she was an adult. The girl claimed that it was just once and just one gold coin. The man reasoned that this world was full of people who could barely make ends meet. He assured that the girl had a good, successful start. The uncle argued that since the start was so good, the girl would make a great adult. The last few days the girl had been eating like a bird. Uncle asked her to eat more, and reminded her that he liked children who ate well, like a cow. The girl wondered if she ate a lot, would she be able to grow up? The man suggested that someone was bullying her for being small. The girl explained that she thought she looked like a child, but to the uncle, she was a child. The girl could spend the money she had earned. She wanted to buy a new notebook because she had already written everything down. The girl asked if her uncle needed anything and promised to buy something for him. Bill asked what Layla would do if he asked for something not expensive. The girl assured him that she would definitely save up a lot of money and buy him the thing. Uncle thought Layla was a very wise and sweet child, although she had a small backbone and not a large build, but she is cute. Therefore, when she grows up, she will be a very beautiful girl. The man thought that beauty was like poison for a woman in difficult circumstances, and if she wanders around not knowing where to go, she'll get into trouble. That's why I wanted to send her instead of someone really trustworthy. But I realized there wasn't one. As day after day passed, Bill kept thinking about the reasons why he couldn't raise Layla, and the right place to send her. A beautiful troublemaker, one day unexpectedly appearing in his life. And the girl continued to grow. The new clothes she had bought were getting small, her creamy skin blooming. The room that looked like a temporary warehouse was transformed into a powder room with a soft air. In my mind was still the image of a child joyfully jumping up and down on the walkway. Before it was possible to realize that Layla had become an 18-year-old girl, remaining as beautiful and fresh as the roses Bill had carefully tended. And it was all in Arvis, along with Bill Reimer. The girl bragged to her uncle about how many raspberries she had picked. She said she was going to pick them tomorrow too, for she wanted to make raspberry jam. The man asked her if she could start a jam-making business. The girl picked some more peaches and offered them to her uncle. Bill agreed, sliced the peaches for them, and noticed that the peaches were ripe and it was summer. The girl was sitting in her room late at night, studying for her exams, and noticed that her eyesight was getting worse lately. She planned to buy glasses when she had saved up some more money. The girl calculated that instead of 20 jars of raspberry jam, she would need 30 jars. She planned to make jam from all the raspberries that grew in the forest. If she could sell them all, she would get a lot of money, and she planned to do it tomorrow. Her uncle came into the girl's room and asked if she was going to bed, claiming that she was working hard and asked her not to overstretch herself, but to go to bed. The girl assured that she would go to bed early. In the past, when her uncle decided to send Layla to school, those around her were against it. After all, why send an orphan who had been sheltered for a short while to school? Even if she continues to live there, when she gets older, one would need to marry her off to some suitable home. But despite entreaties from others, the uncle willingly sent the girl to school. So following her uncle, Layla gradually learned the world unfamiliar to her. The girl was extremely happy when every day she learned something new and could satisfy her curiosity. The girl shared everything that happened to her with Uncle Bill. Looking at the girl, the uncle, as if out of habit, said that Layla would make a great grown-up girl. The girl loved those words, feeling in them as if they were some kind of spell. The night she heard them, she fell asleep imagining that one day she would become a really good adult. The girl definitely wanted to show her uncle that she would grow up to be a great adult, just like he said she would, because that would be her first paycheck to give back for all the time she had only received. For the sake of that, one must pass her current exams with flying colors. The girl pondered that if it was summer, it meant that Duke Gerhard would be arriving soon. Duke graduated from the university, exploring family traditions, entered the Royal Military Academy. The boy was commissioned as an army officer. The reason Duke did not appear in the army the summer of 2 years ago is that he was sent to serve on the front line. And this summer, he returns to the estate, and there is not much time left before shots are heard in the woods again. At Gillis Girls' School, the girls are discussing what they will do over summer vacation. One of the girls says they are going on a trip as a family and wonders what Layla will do. But the girl hasn't decided yet. Layla was studying with Kyle. The girl inquired about what he was doing here, claiming that he could just come by the house later. The boy assured her that he was just driving down the road. In fact, Kyle had skipped practice at the tennis club to walk home from school with Layla. It was Sunday. The club members and the guys were discussing that Kyle didn't show up for practice again because of a girl. The guy offered to go with the girl and eat her favorite ice cream. Layla happily agreed. The main character said that she needed to look at a couple of books and offered to stop by the bookstore on the way. At the bookstore, the girl was looking at an illustrated guide to birds. The girl said that the migratory birds were coming back, so she thought she would write down during the vacation what birds were coming in. While the girl was leafing through the books, Kyle was thinking the whole time about confessing to the girl about falling in love with her. The girl suddenly noticed him looking at her strangely, assuming what the guy wanted to say. But the guy got shy and said he didn't. The guy asked if she had picked out a certain book. The girl said that yes, she had picked a book about birds and now they could go home. Kyle thought it's still early and doesn't want to confess ahead of time, not knowing how Layla feels about him. And he didn't want to bring discomfort to their friendship that had been maintained so far. Kyle admitted that he becomes uninhibited when he sees Layla transforming every day, but he would have to be more patient to continue to see her smile. Kyle felt that it wasn't necessary to start with lovers, since they had known each other for a long time. Seeing fit to become spouses right away, who were comfortable with each other, as they were now, more than with anyone else. The guy wanted to become spouses with the girl who love each other and planned to get married after graduation. Imagining the girl in a wedding dress, and was sure that there would be no bride in this world more beautiful than Layla. And Kyle accidentally laughed out loud. The girl wondered why he was laughing, and thought he was amused because she had done poorly on her geometry exam. She took offense at Kyle. He had good grades in geometry and was sure he didn't understand her. But Kyle got nervous because he was just brooding and yelled for the girl to stop. The protagonists remembered that Duke Gerhard was coming back soon after 2 years. Kyle claimed that lately the people of the manor had been on their ears about the fact that he was coming back soon. Guy wondered why she didn't care at all. But Layla didn't want to see him after that day. Remembering how Lady Claudine had called her to the manor, neglected her, and then given her as if she were alms. However, the person who made the girl feel insignificant was Duke Gerhard. This left a different scar on the girl, different from the scorn and oppression, the ones she had endured when she wandered from relative to relative as a child. Every time the girl saw the Duke, memories of that day flashed through her mind. Therefore, she tried her best not to cross paths with him, even in those moments where they met, when she was called by Lady Claudine coming to the manor. Layla purposely bowed her head as low as possible to avoid seeing him. Layla hated the Duke. He reminded her of events and wounds she wished she could forget. Kyle wanted to become an officer like Duke Gerhard and get an order. To be a sniper, putting a bullet into the heart of the enemy with 100% hit, calling himself Captain Ettman. The guy was sure that was pretty cool. The main character reminded him that he couldn't even kill a single chicken. The guy got embarrassed and asked not to bring it up. One day last year, Bill addressed Kyle's accusations that he was always sticking around their house. He was angry with him because the young gentleman from a rich family even ate at their house, and a lot of it. The uncle said that henceforth the little boy of the Edmund family would not be allowed to enter their house. The boy replied that he could only be with Layla when he came here, using his studies as an excuse. So he offered to even pay for the food, and asked the man what he had to do. Bill replied that mission 1 was to catch food for dinner, and there was failure because he couldn't even catch one chicken. Bill nicknamed him the useless glutton of the Ettman family. Thinking back to that day, the boy claimed that from that day on, his uncle never called him by his first name, after saying all sorts of things, adding glutton instead of his name. The girl claimed that he was a cute glutton, and she liked Kyle because that's what he was. The girl hoped that his hands would be saving people, not shooting guns. She assured the guy that it was much cooler. Kyle promised he'd become a doctor, and pondered to try to become a military doctor, because military doctors get an order too. The girl agreed, because saving people is a great thing. Suddenly a car was coming. The guy asked the girl to move out of the way. They pondered who was sitting there, assuming it was an old lady. The girl realized that it was a madam sitting there, as my lady didn't like cars. During the discussion, Kyle forgot the notebook on the table that he was supposed to show the girl. The girl decided that she would go home and told him to come to dinner and try not to forget the notebook. The guy asked if the girl was waiting for him or the notebook. The girl replied that the notebook. It was obvious. The boy was upset, but either way, he promised to come back quickly. The Duke turned to Hesse and ordered to stop the car. The guy wanted to walk a bit. The servant said they would wait for the lad nearby, but the Duke ordered him not to wait for him. Hesse was angry because the Duke had arrived a week earlier than planned. The servants had barely managed to prepare everything, and now he suddenly decided to walk alone. The boy walked in the woods, breathing the air and remembering his mother's words. She had said that Matthias should have gotten married this summer, and he agreed with her. It was his natural duty to marry at the right time and bear an heir. Grandmother assured him that Claudine was the most suitable lady to take the place of Duchess. Matthias also agreed and accepted his grandmother's advice. Claudine von Brandt had a fine pedigree and had all the qualities befitting a good bride. His mother promised to arrange a meeting with the Brandt family when he returned to Arvis. The boy decided to do just that. He was sure that even if he didn't want or crave something, everything was already prepared in the best way. Perfect life. Sometimes it is so natural for him that it becomes boring. In this life, Matthias was the perfect child, the perfect student, and became the perfect officer. And now he will marry the perfect woman and become the perfect father, to make his family stronger as head of the duchy. After all, that's what his grandfather and father did, and that's what he will do. Suddenly, the boy noticed a girl riding past him on a bicycle. It was Layla, and she too recognized the Duke. She started pedaling fast to go faster, but accidentally fell off her bike. The guy noticed her golden hair and remembered it was that kid, the girl the gardener had borrowed and who ran around the woods all day burying dead birds. The lad marveled that she still lived on his estate. The girl stood up and apologized, beginning to collect the books that had been turned. Matthias turned to her, stepping his foot on her pen and saying her name. The guy walked away and said nothing but her name. The girl did not understand why he was doing this. She thought that a duke, who was praised as a perfect aristocrat, would get up to such a thing. The girl wondered why he was going to walk so slowly all the way home, thinking to use his long legs for their intended purpose and walk faster. After all, she had no right to overtake him. Time passed and the baby grew. The boy realized that she was no longer a girl. She was a girl, Layla Livlin. As summer came, when the roses, Berg's national flower, and the pride of the mansion put on their color, and Duke Gerhard came to the estate, the servants had to work harder than usual, all for the sake of preparing for the reception of the many guests visiting the mansion when the Duke returns. For various soirees, gatherings, and other important events, the hard work of the servants must result in the dignity of their masters. The Earl Brandt family is Berko's second most prestigious noble family, after the Gerhardt family. They were among the guests who were to be treated with special consideration. The nominal reason for the Brandt family's visit was to visit relatives to celebrate the beginning of summer. However, it was known that the Count's only daughter, Claudine von Brandt, had come to Arvis for more than just that reason. Before announcing their engagement, the two families would hold preliminary talks, and for those interested, a friendly meeting. Their purpose was clear, and neither family made any attempt to hide the fact, especially Claudine. Miss Claudine claimed that this greenhouse had always looked simply gorgeous, and it was as if Madame Gerhardt had moved paradise here. Madame shared that it had been meticulously cared for a long time, and the woman was looking forward to handing over the greenhouse to an owner who knows its value. Mama asked Matthias to give Claudine a tour of Arvis Paradise, explaining that they had business to discuss. Now that Claudine had become the perfect lady, there was no shadow of her little sister left in her. Matthias, accompanying the girl, behaved so formally, as if he met for the first time. And there was nothing surprising in this. Even if they are not very close, they have known each other for a long time. Therefore, Matthias von Gerhard and Claudine von Brunn understood how aristocrats were to the bone. This was the most important and obvious reason why they chose each other for a marriage of convenience. As Matthias and Claudine walked around the greenhouse, the girl noticed the birds in it. She remarked that they were amazing and got along so well with people. But the servant replied to the miss that they were clipping their wings. The girl worried that they might be in pain. The servant assured her that it didn't hurt them because they only cut the feathers, offering to show her. The girl asked Gerhard for permission. Matthias inquired what kind of bird the servant was holding. The man replied that it was a canary, and it sings very beautifully. He said that the bird was not yet accustomed to human hands and was highly wary. If the ends of both wings of the bird were cut off, it would not be able to fly far. Neither will it be able to leave its master, and its character will become malleable. The girl wondered if it was necessary to cut them off. The servant argued that birds that can fly freely are not easy for humans to tame. Rather, it is even beneficial to the birds, as it can prevent them from flying to a dangerous place, getting lost or injured. Suddenly, Matthias picked up the bird. It was trying to move its wings, which had already been cut off. The servant took the canary and said that the Duke could not yet tame her at once. She needed time to get used to it. The servant offered to try to tame her. Claudine replied that she had seen enough and thanked that the man was able to satisfy her curiosity. The girl asked to return to the table. As they left, Matthias asked that the servant move the bird to his bedroom. He claimed it was his canary. The servant thanked Layla for picking the flowers and worrying that the girl might have had a hard time. The girl said she was fine and noted that there would be guests tonight. The heroine claimed that Earl Brandt's family would be arriving. The girl realized that Lady Claudine was coming this year. She knew that every time a duke came to the estate, a lady would also come. The maid shared the news that Mr. and Lady Brandt would be engaged to be married. The girl kept pondering who was the distinguished bride the Lord would marry. She noted that holding the Countess's hand and coming to the mansion every year had taken its toll. The place overlooked the Schulter River and the Arvis forest. Matthias, who loved the scenery of the place, remodeled the Elling as an outbuilding. Since his grandmother and mother rarely walked by the river, the outhouse was his own world. In his spare time, it was the place where he absent-mindedly gazed at the landscape, forest and river, read a book or took a nap in the afternoon. Whatever he did, the outhouse was his place of peace of mind. Among all these, the moment he liked best was when he entrusted his body to the river water. The green branches of the trees and the sky seen through them, the rustling of the leaves in the wind, the singing of the birds. The bustle of the engagement, lasting several days, seemed to dissolve into the serene stillness of the river. The talk of the marriage that would bind the Gerhard and Brandt families went smoothly, as expected. The engagement period is 1 year. By the end of this summer, their engagement will be announced to the world. And now that Duke Gerhard had been sufficiently honored, there was no need to remain in his position as an officer for long. After serving a couple of years in the Royal Guard and being discharged, he thought to concentrate on the family business after the wedding. His life would flow like a calm river. He planned it that way, and it was perfect for him. Suddenly, swimming in the river, at this time Layla was sitting in a tree eating an apple. She noticed that it was a naked man, Duke Gerhard. The girl thought he was engaged in some obscenity and closed her eyes. The guy, seeing her, started swimming towards her. The girl told him to swim wherever he wanted, asking him not to swim toward her. The girl hid behind a tree and then quickly ran away and met Kyle. He was just looking for her, and she crashed into him. The guy wondered why the girl was running so fast and what she had going on. The guy thought that she had met a wild animal, although she would have been better off meeting one. The girl was shocked by what she saw, and Kyle brought her to her senses. The guy said that she had gone to pick raspberries and offered to go picking together. The girl flatly refused and claimed she didn't want to. The girl forgot 2 baskets of raspberries and was spotted by the Duke. Thinking that the girl was planning to exterminate all the raspberries in Arvis, Matthias looked at the tree and remembered the first time he saw her. The protagonist was in a store trying on glasses, as she had very low vision. The salesman advised her to read the small print, to see how much she could see everything. The girl said that now she arrived as if in a new world. The girl was glad that she finally bought glasses, so also by her own efforts. It was all thanks to Arvis's raspberry. She stirred the jam herself on hot days, stretching her hands over the fire. Throughout the day, those obscene memories kept popping up in the girl's mind. She didn't understand why, for she should be glad she had bought the glasses. The girl thought that even if it was the Duke's domain, he couldn't be bathing naked in broad daylight. Layla had decided that she would not go near the river again until the Duke had gone, and now she would not be able to go to her favorite place for a while. But the girl suddenly noticed Lady Claudine, and next to her was the Duke. The heroine noted that the girl had turned into a girl in the time they had not seen each other. Claudine almost didn't recognize the girl because of her glasses and asked how she was doing. The girl suggested that they go to the hotel together and have tea. The protagonist was worried that it might take a long time, and she planned to meet Kyle. They sat at a table, all three of them. The girl wondered why Lady Claudine wanted her to accompany them. It was a situation between them, having to fill the space as if she wasn't there. Even if Layla is in the same place with them, all that was left for the girl was to accept it. Through her glasses, she could clearly see the Duke sitting across from her and seeing his glad. As a child, the thought had crossed her mind if she met her gaze with the Duke's eyes. Resembling blue glass, she would hear a clear sound. In this situation, the girl felt very uncomfortable because just now she had decided not to meet him, and now she was sitting across from him. It seemed to the girl that only she was uncomfortable, and the Duke was not at all ashamed of what happened then, emphasizing that it was usually the one who was seen who was ashamed. The girl had already heard that for nobles, servants were no different than furniture or paintings. If that was true, she could now understand it. There was no one who would not be embarrassed to be around such furniture. Layla decided that from now on, she would be furniture without any thoughts or emotions. Miss Claudine asked the girl how school was going and what she planned to do afterwards. The girl was in a class where they trained certified teachers. The heroine praised the girl for her goal. She is sure that Layla will suit this job, and asked Duke what he thought, and the Duke was in agreement with Miss Claudine. Suddenly, the girl ventured to say that it wouldn't be rude to leave first. She explained that it was nearing the time of meeting her friend. The heroine replied that the girl could go and it was nice to see her today. They sat with Kyle on a bench, and the guy praised the girl for accomplishing her goal. Having raked the entire mountain and selling jam, he thought she was incredible. The main character asked the guy why he was smiling all the time. Kyle showed the girl how to push back her glasses to make her eyes the size of mouse eyes. The girl yelled at the guy to stop with jokes like that. The guy came to tennis class hungry and told the girl to eat sooner rather than later. Kyle offered a drink, holding out a water bottle for Layla. Gerhardt was driving the car when they were standing in traffic. He saw Layla sitting with a guy through the window and realized it was a friend she was planning to meet. Duke found out it was a doctor's son named Kyle Edmund. Layla didn't even touch her cup of tea as the three of them sat down. She only sat up straight with both hands on her lap and then quietly walked away. The girl left with a troubled and uncomfortable expression on her face, as if she had run away. Matthias now realized that she had left him for this boy. The lad was very much affected by this and felt jealousy. Madame Brandt noticed through the window the orphan girl that the gardener had flown in. Claudine confirmed that it was indeed that girl. She said that Layla was now a beautiful girl who grew more beautiful every year. It seemed to the mother that this hurt Claudine's feelings. The girl claimed not a bit, for Layla had been beautiful as a child too. But meeting her a few years later struck the girl. She described Layla's appearance: a figure with a thin waist, delicate, graceful facial features, bright green eyes, and light, clear skin. That was why Claudine had suggested she join them. She was curious to meet a girl who had grown up in these parts, from a small child to a beautiful girl, and how the Duke would react to that. The Duke, in Claudine's opinion, fully met her expectations, describing it as a combination of interest and indifference, with impeccable manners and elegance. The heroine advised her mother not to waste her energy on such a thing. Madame Brandt argued that the girl was still quite young and did not understand men. The girl explained that she was not going to get rid of all the beautiful girls around out of jealousy. In order not to fight, the heroine decided to agree with her mother, confirmed the words that she was still young and did not understand men at all. However, she knew for sure that all aristocrats have affairs. The girl quite understood that such a thing could happen, and in this she saw nothing surprising. A duke might well desire a beautiful girl, as her father did, as any other man might. And there were men who shared an affair on the side, and family life. And there were those who dissolved in their abiding love. Matthias was certainly one of the former. He would never give up his commitment and status because of a flash of unchanging desire. Claudine hoped that would never happen, and if suddenly the Duke had a mistress and it turned out to be Layla, it would be much easier for her. Claudine felt that the protagonist would not try to threaten her position. She was sure she could tame, restrain, guide, and she would become her servant. Mom couldn't believe her daughter was seriously saying that. Claudine believed that her mother was weakened by her many pregnancies, barely giving birth to her. Her mother believed that a girl like Layla next to the Duke was a bad idea. Madame Brandt was trapped in her own chains. It was the feeling of inferiority from not being able to produce an heir. Mother lived in constant fear that one day her father's love for her would fade, and he would bring another woman into the house who could bear an heir to the earldom. Claudine thought her mother's life was pathetic and unworthy compared to the extent of her many sufferings. She read, even if he were interested in this beautiful girl, it would make no difference. Her mother argued that love pushes one to do crazy things, but it was love that drove Claudine to vow that she would never be like her mother. She would not live a life full of anxiety, fears, and doubts. Miss Claudine desired a perfect marriage that would showcase her virtues and nobility. She dreamed of a love that would not fade before it had time to develop. The Count had his bird flown in to see her. He was watching Layla from his window. Kyle went to the girl's house, but the door was closed. He figured Mr. was away on business and would have to wait for him. The boy reflected that even with glasses, the future Mrs. Etman looked beautiful. As they were riding their bikes, the girl said that since he had bought the sandwiches, she would pay for dessert. The guy didn't understand why the girl cared about little things like that. Every time they met, Kyle would ride his bike to take her home afterward. She could hold on tighter instead of holding on to him with just 2 fingers. The girl decided that she would get ice cream for dessert. Kyle reflected on the fact that he needed to be patient and wait for the right time. Although the guy was constantly trying to make it happen, the girl's touch made Kyle's heart pound in his chest like it was about to explode. He was getting hot, and he felt guilty sometimes, especially around her. Guy worried that someday in Lila's life she would meet someone and completely forget about him. He figured it was better for her to admit her feelings than to lose her forever. The girl put on a hat with flowers and called out to him. Kyle started laughing. He asked where the hat was from. It looked like she had a giant flower pot on her head. The boy laughed, and next to him was Mr. Bill. Kyle hoped that this horror wasn't bought with money. He wondered where they had managed to pick up this nightmare. The girl claimed that they hadn't picked up anything, and it was a gift from Mr. Bill. Suddenly he changed his mind and started claiming that it was a beautiful hat and had excellent taste. Bill wished the brat would just go home already. Kyle is in love with his girlfriend, but he'll have to put up with a perpetual second place. In first place for Lila will always be her guardian, Bill Reamer. It's not the first time the guy has lent the girl books and noticed that Layla looks great, when fully immersed in reading or even when just eating cookies. Just wanted to ask the girl something. They heard the sounds of hooves approaching, and it was the Duke on horseback. The boys greeted the Duke, and Matthias asked where their guardian was. The girl said that Mr. Bill had gone to town for a while, and she would tell him when he returned. The boy said that since the girl was here, let her pick up a bouquet of roses for him. The girl wondered if she could pick roses for the Duke from the garden at the mansion. The guy told her to prepare nice bouquets and bring them to the outhouse. Kyle offered to help the girl, but she said she could handle it on her own. The girl reminded him that if he stayed late, Mr. Reamer would give him another beating. The girl thought the Duke's request rather strange, but soon she was sure that he was just on his way, and there was nothing strange about it. Still, it troubled her inside. Layla realized that it was normal after all. This was Duke Gerhard, and not some other man. He is a famous aristocrat who recently announced his engagement. Perhaps he was too tired these days. The girl gathered the bouquet and brought it to the Duke. He replied sharply that it needed to be recomposed, explaining that he didn't need such an ornate arrangement. He ordered her to redo it, and without such a screaming color. The girl was shocked at what she heard, but there was nothing left to do but agree. She didn't understand why he couldn't specify right away what color he wanted. Layla did not know the details of the estate's affairs, but she knew that this outbuilding by the river belonged to the Duke, and guests rarely came there. She noticed that he had instructed her to reintroduce flowers to his private space. The girl had purposely chosen brightly colored flowers that Lady Brant liked. In the end, everything came out as expected, concluding that the Duke's opinion was wrong. The girl realized that he could not be good if he was tormenting another person under the scorching rays of the sun. Layla sincerely hated him. When she had already entered the manor, she met a servant and asked where they were going. The servant explained that they had to go to the city on business. The girl realized that the Duke was all alone in the annex, and she became anxious. She saw Matthias lying with his eyes closed. Assuming he was asleep, he looked relaxed and defenseless, quite like another person, realizing that he was forever made to have his flawless image. The girl didn't know what to do, wait or leave, but suddenly the guy opened his eyes. Layla said she had brought new roses and mentioned that she could go and repick. The guy clarified if he said to go repick the roses, would she go? The girl replied that if she made a mistake, she would go, but that he should tell her this time what color he wanted. The girl thought she had said too much. The guy said there was no need to walk and offered to sit down. The girl thought she had cut the ones he wanted this time. The protagonist argued that if Matthias liked it, she'd go then. The guy reminded her that it was her job to put the flowers in a vase, since she had brought them. But the girl didn't know how to make bouquets. She realized that right now it was only the Lord and her in the outhouse. That meant whatever she knew how to do, it was her job, and decided to try to make a bouquet. Looking at Layla, the Duke was reminded of the canary that lived in his bedroom. After she beat her wings in his palm and was moved into his bedroom, his golden bird had become very quiet, as if she had died. But as time went on, she softened and began to follow him so much, so that the words about difficult taming became meaningless. Now she would sit on his arm and rub herself against him. The canary even sang beautifully, looking into his eyes, as if she were talking about something affectionately. He thought that Layla might do the same. When Layla made the bouquet, she asked if the gentleman liked it. The boy said it looked awful. The girl apologized and offered to call a capable maid. The Duke ordered the girl to sit down and eat. Matthias didn't understand why the girl had such a confused face again. Perhaps she didn't like the way he paid for her work. The Duke remembered that she liked it and smiled like a ray of sunshine. And if the girl liked that sort of thing, he could pay her work according to his level. The outcome was terrible, but she did the job instead of the gardener. The girl thanked and said if the Duke had no more errands to run, she would go. Matthias reminded that it was not a request. The girl realized that it was an errand, and her feelings didn't matter anyway, and it was pointless to refuse. And if she suddenly refused, she would find herself in a bad situation. The girl decided to eat everything quickly and go home, even though she had already eaten lunch, and after having a snack, and was sure that she could not get hungry quickly. She wondered if this favor, her payment for the errand or punishment for the flower arrangements. The girl noticed that the Duke was looking at her, and she didn't understand why he was staring at her like that. The guy remembered how before, when he was younger and often confronted her, she would lower her head like that. The guy was annoyed by this and started to take the girl's hat off. He explained that indoors Layla should be without it. The girl could not allow her uncle's gift to become an object for fun. The protagonist stood up and firmly said that she was going home and asked for her hat back. The guy argued that she should start eating, and when she finished, he would give her back her hat. The girl explained that she didn't like it and didn't want to eat, so she asked for her hat back. The guy raised his hand, but because of her tall height, the girl couldn't reach the hat. Matthias abruptly threw the hat from the second floor. The girl realized that this was no accident, decided that she had to get the hat before it floated away in the river. She felt scared, remembering how she had been bullied as a child by throwing it into the water. Uncle Bill had bought that hat for Layla. He claimed if suddenly Layla didn't like it, he would return it and buy another one. It was very nice for the girl that her uncle chose it himself and claimed that this hat was beautiful. Layla was happy and thought the hat was very beautiful. The main character was about to jump into the water to get the hat. She started to take off her glasses, and the Duke was surprised that she was going to climb into the river for the hat. There were shallows, but if she went any farther, there would be a cliff. But just as the girl reached for the hat, there was a precipice and she began to sink. The boy ran after her, not expecting such a fuss over the hat. Matthias jumped after the girl into the river and dragged her up. When they swam out, Layla was unconscious and the guy was very worried about her. The girl came to her senses and asked why he did that. He laughed in response. She was upset that all the jewelry on her hat was wet. The girl thought, if everything is wet, why not splash him with water? The Duke admitted that he hadn't had that kind of fun in a long time, but the girl didn't see how something like that could be fun. The girl irritably wondered why he was like that. The Duke replied that first Layla should thank him for saving her. The protagonist was sure that such a thing wouldn't have happened if he hadn't thrown the hat into the river. But the guy claimed if she had calmly eaten the sandwich, nothing would have happened. The guy couldn't understand how the girl could jump into the water for the hat if she couldn't even swim. She felt the injustice and resentment, but realized she had to bear it, reminding herself that the Duke owned the place, and she shouldn't cause trouble for Uncle Bill. Layla still decided to thank the Duke for saving her and bowed to him. The Duke ordered her to apologize once more, as ladies do. Suddenly she replied, feeling angry that she was sorry to disappoint him, but she did not belong in this house. Matthias explained that it didn't matter, and in front of him she should behave like a lady. The girl decided to do so. She put on her hat, thanked him for saving her, and said goodbye to him. The girl will not be subjected to such situations again, and will not be the cause for jokes. Never would Layla cry over someone like him. She walked on her way home and calmed herself down. Layla slipped away from the gaze of the eyes of blue eyes like river water. She ran towards her home, as if she had done it before, carrying the gold coin in her hands. Her eyes were so wet that even her hat couldn't hide them. Layla didn't like it and she kept running. One day, she happened to see Lady Culloden and the Duke walking, his image of an elegant gentleman accompanying a beautiful lady. It was like a scene from a fairy tale or a love story. Layla unconsciously stopped, watching them. As they walked along the road, the wind blew and the lady's hat flew away. He slowly approached, picked up the hat, and returned it to Lady Claudine. The protagonist noticed his unhurried gestures, which were beautiful. But today, he insulted Layla with his actions, just as he did that day, with an innocent face, as if he should. In front of the Duke, Layla still felt pathetic. That wasn't the reason, but the fact. And today had left even more anger at the Duke, which spread through her body, giving her an excuse to kick a rock lying along the road. Watching as she kicked the innocent stone, Layla frowned due to her poor eyesight. It was only then that the girl realized the mistake she had made. She had forgotten her glasses at the manor, and at that moment the road seemed endless. At that moment, the Duke was looking at the glasses that Layla had forgotten. Matthias now realized that she was frowning her face because of her poor eyesight. Behind the gold glasses, he remembered the frown of the child who had looked at him. Uncouth and ugly, but the child's eyes sparkled unusually. There is a child in Arvis territory who was supposed to stay here for a while. It came out as Layla turned into a beautiful woman, and her green eyes were still shining. There was a fresh, sweet fragrance coming from Layla, reminiscent of the flowers in the garden. This fragrance reminded the Duke of summer heat, and he whispered her full name. He was a little annoyed by the name Layla, which rolled so easily off his tongue as if it were playful. Duke put his glasses in his desk drawer, and then remembered the green shiny glasses panes. Duke showered, changed his clothes, and fixed his hair. It was time to leave the room and head to the banquet. He looked perfect as always, but it was an unremarkable evening for him. Layla thought about the fact that it was a crow. Those birds grab anything shiny. And she remembered the stiletto she had given Uncle Bill for her 13th birthday. The girl had treasured that stiletto, but it had been snatched away by a crow on the first day. She was very upset. She ended up looking for crow's nests in the woods, but never found the stiletto. Layla claimed if that happened, as much as she loved birds, she would have to hate crows. and she and her uncle laughed. Bill promised the girl not to get upset. He would buy new glasses for her, if the girl couldn't find her own. Uncle asked if she couldn't find them, let her share it with him, and told her not to worry about it alone. The girl agreed. The Duke threw Layla's hat into the river, so she didn't say that she had forgotten her glasses on the bridge. After all, that would make her uncle uncomfortable. The glasses were to remain where they were, and the girl planned to pick them up quietly in the morning. But the next morning, near the outhouse, she couldn't find them. The girl ran around, searching, for she remembered that the glasses were lying in a conspicuous place. The girl noticed that the handkerchief was there, but the glasses had disappeared somewhere. She thought about the fact that the Duke might have taken them, but then she put those thoughts aside. She didn't understand why the Duke would take her glasses. When the girl saw a crow sitting in a tree, she thought it was the crow that had stolen the glasses again. She wondered where the crow lived and where to find its nest. Layla had two suspects, the crow or the Duke. For Kyle, Phoebe the bird brought a note and he fed her in return. It was interesting why Layla sent him a letter if they were planning to meet at the library. This letter said that Layla had lost her glasses, so she wouldn't be able to come to the library. The guy was worried about the girl after all. These were the glasses she had worked hard for. Kyle urgently gathered himself to help the girl in her search for the glasses. His mom wondered where he was going. The boy assured her that he was going to the library to study materials, lastly saying that he was following Layla. The guy rode his bike to the main character's house. He clarified if she had found them. After the girl answered negatively, the guy claimed that he would buy new ones for her, but Layla refused, hoping to find her glasses. Because of the excitement, Kyle momentarily forgot what a child Layla was. Having seen the girl from a young age, he knew that look. No matter who said what, she wouldn't back down from her own. Layla Llewellyn was an incredibly stubborn woman who achieved her goal by any means necessary. The main character first decided to check the crow's nest, but the glasses were not there. The guy from downstairs shouted at her to be more careful, as a flock of crows flew at her. The girl thanked the guy for going with her, but now she could go alone. Kyle refused to leave. He was worried that Layla might hurt herself, so he couldn't leave her alone. At that moment, a Duke drove by and wondered what these kids were doing. The servant explained that Layla had lost her glasses and apparently a crow had taken them away. So they were inspecting the crow's nests. The boy was surprised by the servant's answer. Matthias was sure she must remember leaving them on the dock, but went and looked for them in the crow's nests. The Duke and Layla's eyes crossed, and the girl wondered why he looked at her so ominously. She decided to see who was really guilty of stealing the glasses, the Duke or the crow. After that, Layla scoured the forest for a few more days, and Kyle happily accompanied her. She was so proud of her futile endeavors that Matthias pretended not to know anything, and it was amusing to watch the girl rake the nests of innocent birds. But in time, the Duke began to tire of the silly antics of these two, as well as of himself. The servant helps Matthias put on his jacket and reminds him that the Marquis Lindemann will arrive at noon. The servant tells the Duke that the lady asks him to join him for dinner. Suddenly Layla appeared in front of Matthias. She was very polite to the Duke. Matthias noticed that she looked completely different from herself that day as she shook off the water from her hat and skirt onto him. The girl was just beginning her dialogue when the phone rang, and Matthias was distracted. Layla had a poor understanding of what it was about, but it was a confusing conversation about a contract. She emphasized that he was constantly working even in the outhouse. The Gerhardt family's business was of incredible proportions, so it was natural for him to be busy. The girl was surprised that despite being busy, he looked relaxed and unconcerned. Even when Matthias smiled, his eyes remained calm, and his posture was always straight, as if he'd been born with it. Even talking on the phone, Layla could feel his strength and the nobility of the head of the family. The girl now understood why everyone called Duke Gerhardt perfect. Duke Gerhardt, whom everyone admired, was the suspect who took Layla's glasses. Even the fact that the girl had come to ask him this question made her feel pathetic. This seemed absurd to the girl, and she decided to go to the nest she had failed to climb to. While he was talking, she apologized and said goodbye to the gentleman, intending to leave. But the guy ordered her to wait. Matthias hung up the phone and asked what she wanted. The girl explained that she had left her glasses on the dock the day she fell into the water, hoping that perhaps the Duke had seen them, but the boy answered unequivocally. Gerhardt kept saying that maybe he hadn't seen her glasses, or maybe he had hidden them. Layla decided that the Duke was mocking her again, and was sure he couldn't have done that. Matthias asked the girl why he couldn't do that. She explained that it was a very bad thing to do. There was a banquet in the master bedroom. Rie could not believe that the Duke had prepared a place for everyone in such a private space. He claimed that Gerhardt had been very generous in honoring his fiancée's requests. Claudine argued that the guy had had too much to drink and reminded him that they hadn't had a pommery yet. But everyone knew that Claudine would be the future duchess. Riette noticed the birdcage and was shocked to see Matthias's new hobbies. The bird flew around the room and perched on the Duke's arm. Matthias claimed that he decided to try and raise it. Riette joked about the Duke wanting to raise and shoot it himself. The lad felt sorry for the bird, for it doesn't even know what kind of man the Duke is, and entrust herself to an experienced bird hunter, wondering if she was poor or stupid. Claudine remembered that the Duke brought this bird from the greenhouse and wondered what name he gave it. The girl wanted to name it herself. Matthias replied that she shouldn't, and it was just a bird. Rietu recognized the bird as poor, for it loved the hunter, who would not allow it to be named. As Matthias and Layla were figuring out where her glasses had gone, a servant suddenly walked in. He provided an urgent telegram for the lad and insisted he needed to check now. A cold nod from the Duke that meant the girl could go. Layla had to go back without asking more about the glasses. Still, she was sure it wasn't the crow that had taken them, but the Duke. The girl didn't understand why he had decided to take her glasses, assuming that he too loved shiny things like the crow. The girl pondered what she should do. Perhaps come to him with requests until he returned them himself. She was sure he would not give the glasses back so easily. But it was night, and Layla let out a low cry of despair. She couldn't wait forever, and she supposed the whereabouts of the glasses were in the outhouse. The girl was sure Matthias wouldn't carry the glasses from the wharf straight to the mansion. Just tonight, the Gerhardt family had gathered for dinner. The girl is sure everyone will be partying late into the night, including the Duke, and no one will go to the outbuilding away from the mansion around midnight. So Layla decided to quickly go to the outhouse and secretly take the glasses. The moon was shining brightly that evening, so she could easily walk to the outhouse. Matthias had set a trap for Layla and decided to test it. The Duke was sure she understood the meaning of his words, even though she looked confused. He realized this as he looked into her green eyes that were staring back at him. The main character had been searching every crow's nest in the forest for days, looking for the glasses. So the guy was sure that this time too, she would not give up easily and fall for it. The Duke was waiting for her secretly in the outhouse, holding her glasses in his hands. Matthias could not answer himself what he wanted to get out of this bait. But he felt no uneasiness. But Matthias had purposely left the front door open to make it easier for her to enter. But Layla decided to act on her own and climbed through the window. The boy heard the sound and guessed that she had entered through the window. He recognized that this woman was beyond his expectations, albeit in an unconventional way. The Duke pondered what she would do first entering the annex with such confidence. First, she would check the drawers, but she would find nothing in them. While the girl was looking for her glasses, she didn't notice that the Duke was next to her on the couch. It was only a bait for the girl to fall for. Matthias admitted to himself that he wanted to get this woman. Layla was still untrained, but he was willing to accept that. He just waited for her, realizing he had set such a foolish trap. As she rummaged through the drawers, the Duke suddenly asked if she was looking for glasses. Layla was startled. She hadn't expected to see Matthias there. She was sure he would be at the banquet at the manor tonight. And she didn't know what to do, or how to explain herself. The Duke argued that if he wasn't here, it was more likely that she could come here quietly. Accusing the girl of stealing, she was confused by what she heard. But suddenly, she noticed her glasses in Matthias's hand and firmly replied that she had come to return what was hers. The guy argued that she shouldn't play the brave one, since she was shaking so pathetically. He turned around and headed for the balcony. Layla assumed that he was going to throw her glasses into the river. The protagonist ran and stood in front of him, forbidding him to throw away her glasses. Suddenly, the girl became embarrassed, remembering how she was dressed. The guy reminded her that she had seen every part of his body, and asked that the girl not be dramatic by presenting herself in front of him in a shirt. Layla argued that she had no choice at the time and didn't want that. The girl decided to calm down, realizing that she was at a disadvantage. The Duke could accuse her of stealing or throw her glasses in her hand if he wanted to. She realized that any action he took would not be in her favor. The girl made the decision to apologize to the Duke. Matthias was surprised that she was acting like a lady. She argued that whoever she was, the Duke was still a gentleman. Guy assured her that she didn't know that, for he might as well have been a gentleman. But to Layla, he was a gentleman, the best in all of Kalsvar. She didn't say it sincerely, but because she had to.